But I think, again, even diving deeper than that, it's knowing our core values allows not us as a married couple, knowing my core value allows me to live into um, the authenticity of who I am.
Hmm.
And that empowers me because I'm no longer trying to Facebook it. I'm not trying to
Right.
be what somebody else has or be what somebody else does. But then when I know my core value and I know your core value, what that does is it creates support. Support
Right.
looks like this. It looks like managing against the actions and the environments that I know are going to violate,
Hmm.
whether that's from me or somebody else. I give you support because I understand and recognize a core value for you, and I can start to see it. We can be in a group of other people and I can see somebody violate a core value. I began to support you by knowing how to manage against that, like knowing how to pull back away from that, knowing
Right.
how to take us out of that environment.
Hmm.
What word do I need to say? How do I need to turn that conversation away from that? But then assigning meaning to that core value.
Well, welcome to Pillow Talk. I'm Grant. This is my wife, Stephanie. And after almost 38 years of marriage, we've discovered how to communicate for better understanding and yoke our differences to pull stronger toward a common purpose.
As certified marriage coaches, we want to help reignite passion and connectedness in your marriage through intimate, authentic, and unguarded conversations. Now let's have some pillow talk.
Let's do it. Welcome back to Pillow Talk. It's good to be here. We are traveling to where?
Alabama. We're going to be in
Alabama.
Alabama on my birthday.
On your birthday.
Not a better thing to do than to add value to people on your birthday.
That's
I love
awesome.
it.
We are so excited to do that. And you know
Yeah.
how we think about the word excited, but we
Yeah.
are.
We're really looking forward to it.
So we were talking about core values last week.
Relationship core values.
Yeah, right.
Communication, quality, honesty, trust, intimacy, shared beliefs, and validation, and how that a marriage can at a top level be experiencing those and think that, hey, we are doing all the things right. Why are we still frustrated? And so today we want to kind of step into why just managing and being aware of relational core values is not enough.
Right. And the reason for that is because not only do you have those relational core values, you also have your own core values. You get into like one of mine is freedom, family. That's where that stuff like that starts to fall in. And again, when you have those, you can have some pretty good arguments when they get violated. And it can be totally innocent when someone violates them. We've had ours violated because I would, leave when dinner was ready. I would have mine violated because I felt like Stephanie was trying to get me to do things or not let me do things that I wanted to do, and it was just because I hadn't really communicated why or what that I was wanting to do. So, yeah, just because you've got the foundational core values in place doesn't mean you're not still going to get frustrated times. And if we let those things build up and grow, that's what causes divorce. That's the reason that divorce is the same in the church as it is in the world. And there's no excuse for it except for we're not applying the teachings that we should be applying. We're saying, I believe in God, but there's no faith behind it because there's no action to it.
Right.
So, excuse me about that. Yeah, once in a while, you just got to, clear your throat. So, again, when we are identifying our individual core values, it is so important. And we need to also not only know ours, but we also need to know our spouse's core values. In fact, maybe even slightly ahead of knowing your own almost,
Yeah.
Because that's just, it's amazing how many times you can violate your spouse's core values by not even knowing what you're doing. And it's that innocent.
It's subconsciously, sometimes it happens because most people in marriage aren't consciously waking up thinking, I cannot wait to violate my spouse's core values today.
Yeah, I sure hope I can piss her off today.
But so I would like to, on a positive side of that too, a lot of times marriages, you step into a space where maybe you're unconsciously thriving just because you don't understand that you are operating that way. You are, doing a pretty good job of understanding without even realizing you're doing that. I mean, we had some great years of marriage before we knew this.
Oh yeah.
They were good. Now they're great. So even if you never intentionally identify them, you will subconsciously thrive when you're operating in them.
Mhm.
And I guess not and, it'd be you're going
Right.
to feel anxious and stressed when somebody violates them. So
Yeah.
that's kind of an indicator. When you feel like your marriage is on all four cylinders and you're rocking and rolling, things are going good. If you'll become intentional about that, you'll go
Right.
from good to great and really start thriving.
One thing I can, and it's like things can be going so smooth, and then just immediately, bam,
Yeah.
that is a core value that has been violated. You just need to stop, think, okay, I didn't mean nothing by this, but something triggered that.
You could see
Why?
it.
What
You can
was it?
see anxiousness and stress in your spouse. And if
Yeah.
you can't see that in your spouse, then that you need to go back to square one and have that conversation.
Right.
But I think, again, even diving deeper than that, it's knowing our core values allows not us as a married couple, knowing my core value allows me to live into the authenticity of who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And that empowers me because I'm no longer trying to Facebook it. I'm not trying to be what somebody else has or be what somebody else does. But then when I know my core value and I know your core value, what that does is it creates support. Support looks like this. It looks like managing against the actions and the environments that I know are going to violate you,
Mm-hmm.
whether that's from me or somebody else. I give you support because I understand and recognize a core value for you, and I can start to see it. We can be in a group of other people and I can see somebody violate a core value. I began to support you by knowing how to manage against that, like knowing how to pull back away from that, knowing how to take us out of that environment. Mm-hmm. What word do I need to say? How do I need to turn that conversation away from that? But then assigning meaning to that core value. We've talked before about how we both have family as a core value individually, but we assign meanings differently. This is what you manage for. Right. This creates the sustainability that you need in a marriage, because this looks like when I know how you define family, mm-hmm. Now I get to manage for that. I get to make sure I help you step into the environments and the situations that create that for you. Because when you're thriving in that core mm-hmm. value, the way you define it, man, there's sustainability right there in your marriage.
Right. No, definitely. So, and when you have that, then you start fighting for unity and building on those common ground. And so we often fight against each other because the other's strengths can get in the way almost. Like now we understand, like you can see my values get violated and you're not going to use harmony at that point.
I've learned not to use harmony
because harmony is one of her strengths, and she's really good at bringing you to the middle. But when you've been violated, you're not looking
for the middle,
for the understanding at that time. You're looking for a soothing salve to come over.
Well, you're looking for validation. It goes back to that. You're looking for validation. Like, I don't need you to tell me why the other person's validated. I need you to validate me.
I need to be validated. Right.
And that's the difference right there.
So we often get or fight against each other's strengths instead of fighting for that unity. And unity, like we discussed last week, is not sameness. Our differences are our strengths as a married couple. And as we discover and we grow and we learn our values more, that just gets stronger and stronger.
Yeah, our opposite core values, if we have opposite core values, or if we define them differently, that becomes a bridge to add strength to each partner.
Mm-hmm.
It's a bridge right there. I love Ecclesiastes 4:9-12. You know, we all know this probably, but in the New International Version, it says that two are better than one. Though one may be overpowered, two can defend themselves. I think about the picture of, this is funny, I think about the movie Mr. and Mrs. Smith. At one point in that movie, they're fighting the enemy, the bad guys, but mm-hmm. they're back to back. They've got each other's back. And that's what I always think about when I read this, is that I could, if I'm trying to fight my battle on my own, I am getting hit from every side. If we're fighting together because we built on common ground, and we may be fighting it from different views, but we're back to back, not fighting face to face. We're fighting out together. And I just think that is such a great picture. And then building on that, Amos, which is kind of a random scripture, I know, but 3:2-4 talks
Find
about,
that one in your Bible.
yeah, that's the pages that are stuck together. This is also the New Living Translation. Can two people walk together without agreeing on the direction? You can't walk together if you don't agree on the direction that you're walking.
Yep.
This is finding common ground, and that's what establishes unity. I think that's write the vision, make it plain. You know, all those things. It's like even if you don't agree exactly on the vehicle that you're taking in the direction, most of the time you can agree on the direction.
Right.
You know, we need our kids to be well grounded. What does that look like?
Mm-hmm. And that, a lot of people are always waiting on God's timing. And the reason you're waiting so long is he's waiting on you to come into an agreement. His timing, he's not going to have me drag Stephanie somewhere, and he's not going to have Stephanie, totally change the personality and the strengths that he put in her to make me better. So, it's up to me to recognize that.
Almost a safeguard, isn't it? If
Yeah.
we learn to wait on God's timing with each other, then it almost safeguards us from making too many errors in our steps.
I actually heard a message today from friends of ours, actually been on the podcast, Kyle Trish, and he was talking about a lot of times we, though, can get almost bogged down in the sand because we just keep waiting. And the thing is God wants us to have or take control over the things we have control. And then he'll step in when it's only he that can do it.
Just supernatural.
Right. The footsteps are, ordered of the Lord. Well, the standing stills aren't.
Right.
So
yeah, he might order them, but you have to obey the order and step out. And I think in that, just to kind of split it apart, because sometimes I know when we talk with married couples, it's like they're just like, well, I'm so far away from that, I don't even know what to do. Well, you just stepped into stage one, which is awareness. I think that there are 3 levels of this. As you find that that direction on common ground, the first thing is you get an awareness of, what am I missing?
Right.
That's the very first question that you ask. We talk a lot about ask better questions, and instead of just throwing your hands up in there and say, oh, I can't do it, it's too hard, start with the awareness. If you're saying, wow, I've never heard this, I didn't even know such a thing, you might even be saying, I don't agree with that. Okay, that's an awareness. Begin to ask the question, what am I missing? And then acknowledgement. What do I really want? And now I've established what I'm missing. Now what do I really want? Do I really want common ground with you? Do I really want to fight for unity?
Right.
Do I really want a direction?
Well, in that area, even we were actually discussing this today. You try to write your purpose statement down, and you're trying to write down what you want, and you really don't know what you want.
You don't know who you are yet.
You don't know who you are. You don't know, you're sitting there thinking, oh, I would love to live on a golf course, or I'd love to have a ranch, or I'd love to, whatever it is.
But why do you want that?
Why do you want it? And do you really want it? And one of the things I'll tell you is, if you had an avenue to it, would you be willing to do what it takes to get there?
Want something bad enough, you'll find a way.
I watch a guy on YouTube all the time named Trinity, and he was talking about if in Montana, he's a Montana rancher, and he's like, people all the time saying they want to ranch in Montana, but are they willing to endure 9 months of snow and cold?
The answer would be no.
Are they willing to get on horseback and ride all day long, every day, to cover 6,000 acres and move cattle and all that stuff? So do you know what you really want?
What do I really want? And then, that's discovery, where what am I missing is a show me state, not Missouri, show me state. Acknowledgement says, what do I really want? And that's discovering. Is what I'm doing taking me closer to or farther away from my desire? Those are questions we ask every day.
Right.
And then finally, action. So what can I do differently? Maybe you're in a point where where your marriage is supposed to go, and there's a direction that God has spoken to you, and you know what you really want. Well, guess what? You got to take the step.
Right.
So what action can you take today? What's the intentionality here now? And that's a piece that people miss. Yeah.
I think it's something that's probably the area that we've been on in our marriage so much for the last couple of years. It's the action steps. We've identified, we want peace. in our marriage, but we keep doing the same actions that doesn't bring peace.
Right.
Not that we're doing that right at the moment, but
That's just a
we
good
have done
example.
that. Trust me, and we think if we continue to do the same thing over and over, we get different results. And that's just not how things work. If you want a different result, you got to have a different action. And so now, we're used to, would get silent and not have the conversation. Now the silence is thinking, how do we have the conversation?
Right.
It's not trying to avoid it. It's how do I bring that up? How do we address that? Some people say address it immediately. I'm not in that camp, and I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm just saying for me, I'm not in it. I'm more as, let's get my emotions in check. Let's let that initial feeling die down a little bit where I can control. We can have this in this kind of a conversation instead of a defensive conversation. That's not what we want.
And sometimes for me, that looks like I go in my journal and I write down what my frustration is. Sometimes putting it on paper is like, oh, well, it's really not what I thought it was. So anyway, I kind of got up on that.
No, that's great.
So I think, finding that direction or that common ground that does establish that unity where it becomes very easy and common for you to fight back to back against whatever situation. So you're not fighting each other, you're fighting for unity. And unity is that linked up. You're different. You're facing different directions. You handle things differently, but you're fighting together.
Right.
And I think that's the whole key here is that we become unified in our vision then. When we find common ground, then we have a gained focused direction.
Definitely. So hopefully that helped you all.
So yes, work on finding your core values and
your common ground.
We have, there's some great resources out there to do that, some great things, but we won't get into that on this particular episode.
I mean, we can at least mention this. There's some areas that we can help you in. We do 3 or 4 different actual small group type things when we can get together. I mean, we don't do those in one-on-one very often, but we'd be willing if that's what you wanted. We also do the SYMBIS. It's called Save Your Marriage Before It Starts, but it's for before it starts. It's also, it's a great awareness tool. Yeah, really it is designed to take into account whether you're married or not when you take the assessment.
Yeah, it's very intuitive.
And then we do the Marriage Reboot, which is a very intense 2-day event where you come stay with us and we help you walk through all this. We
unpack all of this on a personal level with you so that you walk away.
And you leave with a game plan.
With your own game plan.
So go to foreverwithpurpose.com, click the Facebook or the Instagram, whatever you're on, and follow us there. Leave a remark. And if you're watching on YouTube, hit that little notification thing there and the bell so you know when the next podcast, video cast comes out. So thanks again for joining us on Pillow Talk. Have a great week.